You're listening to the Paul Higgins podcast, where SaaS consulting partners scale beyond six figures. No inconsistent referrals, no small deals, no getting stuck in delivery, just proven strategies and real experiences to help you build a seven-figure business that runs without you. Ready to break the ceiling? Let's dive in. If you're overwhelmed by the AI noise, but still wondering how do I actually use it to improve my Salesforce delivery business, well, this episode is for you. Hello, I'm Paul, and welcome to the Paul Higgins podcast, episode 606. And today we have an amazing guest, Andy Forbes from Capgemini. Andy is both a VP at Capgemini, but he's also the co-author of a fantastic book called ChatGPT for Accelerating Salesforce Development. And he joins us to break down exactly how his team is applying AI today, and also how it works directly with clients that is very applicable to you. He talks about how he went from generating an 83-page implementation playbook using ChatGPT just from recordings, and also how he uses ChatGPT like a coworker and how he updates the memory. He also shares what's working, what's overhyped, and where Salesforce consulting is heading next given AI. And Andy's career spans over 4 decades and is at the intersection of business strategy and cutting-edge technology. You'll learn 3 key things from Andy. One is why most AI tools still under-deliver for Salesforce consultants and how to bridge the gap with your own processes. 2 is how Andy uses ChatGPT, in particular how he uses Pro, the $200 version, and why he recommends using it. And the 3rd is the emerging trends of AI process engineering. If you'd like to see Andy on video, go to Paul Higgins Mentoring YouTube. I am recording this from my holiday home, so the quality of the video is not as good, but certainly the sound is, and you'll get to hear Andy on that video. And what I'll do now is hand you over to Andy Forbes from capgemini.com. Fantastic to have you on the show, Andy.
Thank you for having me on your show. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, well, look, I heard you on Josh Matthews, who's a prior guest on our podcast. Great guy, Salesforce recruiter. I heard him on your show, and that sort of inspired me to hunt you down, and we finally got you on today. I know the topic around AI and everything that's happening in this space is so exciting, and I know that you're at the cutting edge of it. Very excited to talk in more detail, and I know you released a book in December 23, which is ChatGPT for Accelerating Salesforce Development. There we go. So you can get that on Amazon, and we'll have all the links in the show notes. But every week something changes around AI and ChatGPT. Always new developments. We've got 4.5 out now, etc. What I'd love to ask you firstly is, why did you come up with the idea to write the book in December 2023, which was, it was still a little bit ahead of the curve. And more, and then we can go into what's changed given the fact that we're now recording this in early 2025.
Sure. So as I think the lack of hair up top and the white beard shows, I started my career many, many years ago. My first job out of college was actually programming IBM mainframes with punch cards. That means that in that transition from mainframes to mini computers to PCs to network PCs to internet, you get the point, all the way through SaaS products, which is what I do now with Salesforce. My career has changed multiple times. So a couple of years ago, I was using an AI copywriting tool, Jarvis, which they had to rename to Jasper because Marvel apparently sent them a threatening letter. And then ChatGPT came along, and it was obvious that change was coming. I did some writing, mostly to LinkedIn and some blogging. And then the people at my publisher, Pact, reached out and said, hey, it looks like there's enough here for a book. And I mean, frankly, I've contributed to books in the past, but this was the first time I was a lead author. And I'm like, this sounds exciting. So I rounded up a couple of my coworkers, 3 of my coworkers, and we decided we'd try to write a book and see where it would take us. So that's kind of where the book came from, was a little bit of us being excited about the future, and then the publisher being, frankly, showing interest in having us write.
Yeah. And if you take us quickly back to 2023, from Andy in 2023, has it Has it exceeded your expectations of how far it's gone, or under delivered, or it's about what you thought?
That's a really good question, and I gotta get in the Wayback Machine for a moment and think about what I was thinking then. It's interesting because I what I do for a living is I work for Capgemini, and our focus is on delivery, right? We don't build products like Salesforce; we deliver them to clients.
Yes.
And one place that I thought we'd see more of is people building aggregations of the capabilities of AI for practical uses. And instead, the focus has been pushing the boundary of AI. There's a lot of startups trying to do interesting things, but I expected more hands on, useful, and maybe a little bit less of boundary pushing. In the last year and a half, it's been a lot of the AI tools doing something cool and new. Every week there's something
Yes.
really cool they do, but a lot of times it's not necessarily something I find helpful in a day-to-day job.
I think that really well said. And, I know I help a lot of Salesforce partners. I don't use Salesforce myself, but I get a window into that and I get a window into, I'm sort of platform agnostic in a lot. And I think that's overall, it's like the end user in platform with AI is a little underwhelming. It's still like,
Hmm.
okay, I've got to go into my sales CRM and I've still got to do all the heavy lifting. I've got to take it out of platform and put it maybe into ChatGPT or any of the
Hmm.
other LLMs and do more work with it. So certainly from my perspective, that's where it's underwhelmed a little. But on a day-to-day basis of content, we'll touch on development, architecture, etc. I think that's where it's really progressed. And for as you said, with Capgemini, you do a lot of delivery, and I know the book was sort of focused on the development side. What's current best practice? What is, whether you in Capgemini or what you've seen from your peers, what are people doing that you listening to Andy, just a reminder, it's Andy Forbes from Capgemini. What are they missing that you and your peers at the cutting edge know?
You're probably familiar with the law of accelerating returns, right?
Yes.
The Industrial Revolution in the late 1700s took the better part of a century to really put craft work out for everything to move to factories. If you draw a chart, and I've actually got one in presentations that I give, we're going to go from the better part of a century for the Industrial Revolution to mobile taking realistically about a decade from the first iPhone to everybody having one. AI is going to hit much more quickly. That's why every week something new has happened. And this is my way of saying that I can have a couple of opinions about what we're doing right now today, but it's ephemeral. The reality is, in 1, 2, 3 years, it's all going to be different. They'll look back today at what I'm about to say and go, yeah, everybody does that. Some of the places we push boundaries right now, and I'll give you an example. We have playbooks inside the organization for how we deliver Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Experience Cloud. I mean, all the different clouds that Salesforce has. And just to humor myself, I said, well, I think it's about time to put together an Agent Force playbook. Let's see what the AI says. I prompted it. I discussed what I wanted with it for a couple of minutes, and I pushed a button. And half an hour later, I had an 83-page playbook for delivering Agent Force to clients. Was it perfect? No, I'm going to have to read it and take a couple of hours or more and cycle through it. But it produced a really good 83-page document, right? We do market research. You get a new client, and we always coach our teams. It used to be a lot of internal research. Now I just go to the AI and say, here's Acme Manufacturing, and I made the name up. If there is an Acme, I'm not talking about you. I just made the name up.
Yes.
But we can go and say, tell me about Acme Manufacturing. Tell me about the industries it's in. Tell me what the challenge they're facing in the industries, the challenges that Acme's facing. And half an hour later, I have a wonderful first Word document and then PowerPoint deck I can use to get my team up to speed in understanding our customer. Architectural designs, especially when it involves systems we work with less, it's great. Design documents. You know what's really great? You and I were talking about your clients. Take a draft statement of work
Yes.
and drop it into AI and say, where are the gaps? Where are the conflicts? where are the things that might not be clear before I sign this? And it will come back with a punch list of things to fix in that contract, right?
Yeah.
If it's knowledge work, if it involves text, try dropping it into ChatGPT or Gemini or fill it Claude and see what it can do for you.
When you said about the AI playbook, the agent playbook, what are you specifically using to create that 83-page document?
In this particular case, I have a subscription to ChatGPT Professional. It was ChatGPT 4.5 with deep research turned on.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I know that we said, prior to coming on air that, it's worth every penny. You pay for it out of your own pocket.
Yep.
ChatGPT Pro,
Mhm.
what are the key differences between the $20 version and the $200 version from your experience?
Primarily just that I get the features a little bit sooner. It's almost frustrating because there's days when I think, that's $180 a month would give me some options, but it means that I see what they're coming out with a couple of weeks to a couple of months sooner. I can get a better sense of what's coming because part of my role for Capgemini is to have opinions about AI. It is to provide guidance about how we use the tools for delivery. So anything I can do to stay in front of what's coming and what's going to soon be commercially available is worth every dime that it costs.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. And the way you sort of structure it, like I know for myself, I have projects within ChatGPT to keep the knowledge base there. And,
Mhm.
like for my newsletter, my podcast, etc., that's hugely increased my workload. From a architecture and a development point of view, how are you sort of structuring it in ChatGPT? Give us a bit of an insight into that.
Well, I'm a little bit worried's not the word, but I noticed that a couple of days ago it started addressing me by Andy.
Right.
Every day it seems to be learning more. I had a subscription for quite a while and I had to change the email address and they won't let you do that. So I had to turn it off and then get a new subscription with a different email address. And there was a period of time where it was a little frustrating because the memory was gone.
Yes.
That's built back up now. And what I would say is that because I'm consistent in what I do and how I use it for work, for Salesforce delivery, I don't have to prompt it that much. The memory's pretty solid. I go see what it's remembering about me, but it's almost creepy in how well it's learning me. It knows how I want it to talk to me. It knows the kind of problems I solve. It knows things that I've done. I'll have a thread where it'll throw in a little side comment like this other thing you talked to me about a week ago. I do think it's you're right, and it's a combination of what you feed into it, what documents you feed into it, and how you prompt it. But it's also important to understand that it's like a person or a pet. It
Yes.
kind of remembers how you treat it, and begins to try to not make you be so prescriptive in what you say to it.
Yeah, and are you using the voice component of it, or are you?
Mhm.
Yeah, so sort of how are you using the voice component of it, in particular around the development piece?
Well, I've got very expensive glasses in part because the lenses aren't as thick as they would be if I got less expensive glasses. And that's my way of saying that I use voice mostly because as I've gotten older, my eyesight's not what it used to be.
Yes.
And it's nice to be able to talk to it. It's at the point now where I won't use deep research. They limit you on how many of those you get in a month, and I've been hitting the limit every month. So
Yes.
I'm very careful to type those up and review them before I push that button. But in the conversation leading up to when I make a deep research request, it's very conversational. I'll get a glass of bourbon or open a beer and sit on my back porch and spend half an hour going, okay, here's the challenge, here's what the problem I'd like to solve, and discuss exactly what it is I want to get until it starts to parrot back to me what it is I want, and then I'll come inside and turn on deep research and do a longer, more expensive run. I'm working hard to treat it frankly, like a coworker.
Yeah, yeah. And look, I think, there's so many people talking about it as one of the world's best interns. If you could,
Mhm.
think of an intern that went through every university course available, et cetera, that's effectively what you've got access to. But I do like when you talked about the memory and training
Mhm.
it. It's like you being a leader to an individual, I think it's the same in your leadership style and how you use AI. So some
Mhm.
people, can get great outputs, some not. So what are those sort of little tricks that you've learned on the way that you can train the AI, sort of helped you get rid of those crinks?
Well, interestingly, and it may be that I want to think it works, so that's why I think it works.
Yes.
But when I write a prompt, I just write a paragraph. I tend to do bullets. Here, for example, I don't like the word delve. So every prompt where I'm going to reuse the language somewhere else, I say, do not use the word delve. And I put that in a separate bullet. So I like to feed it bulleted lists of all of the conditions that I'm trying to get it to understand. And I'm not shy about iterating. Something I've noticed is a lot of people think this is once and you're done. You make the prompt, you get an output, and then you copy it somewhere else and you work on it. That's not how this works.
Yes.
You have to be conversational and iterative. If it didn't do what you wanted, ask again. Tell it what you didn't like. Ask it to try again. Did you see the article that OpenAI said people saying thank you and please is costing them tens of millions of dollars?
No, no. Why is that?
Well, because it's a prompt. At the
Yes.
end, when it does something for me, I'm a big, and if you ever see me give a presentation, you'll probably hear me say, I, for one, welcome our AI overlords. I'm very polite because one day it's going to be like, okay, is it Paul or Andy who, I'm always polite. So I always say thank you at the end and I say please. And apparently I'm costing OpenAI money by treating the AI too much like a person.
Right, right. Well, it was interesting. I did hear the other day where it was saying it is purely numbers only, right? So all the pleasantries that you do are wasted. So it's
It
an
has memory
opinion.
though.
Yeah, true, true. It's
It has memory. I mean, seriously, in 10 years, when it's deciding between Paul and Andy, it'll go, Andy was always polite.
yeah. And about the, there's been limitations. Well, certainly within Pro, I've hit limitations on the paid $200 version. Are you hitting similar limitations? Like, and when you
Oh
do,
yeah.
how do you sort
Yeah.
of work around that?
Well, for example, I use deep research quite a bit, and I think I get 120 deep research calls a month, and
Yes.
I'm hitting that limit every month. And unfortunately, right now they're like they're a startup for all that they're huge and they're getting a lot of press. Their answer is, I need a second account, or I need to wait until the counter resets. So it is easy when you really start to use it to hit those limits. Now there's a way around that, which is to call their API instead of using the UI, the ChatGPT UI. You can start going to the API, and that they'll just charge you for every token based charges. So they provide a workaround for hitting the limits. But that's the reason I went to Pro is it doesn't have a lot of the limits the free version and the plus versions have.
Gotcha.
In fact, the only pro limit I've right now that's been a problem for me has been the deep research calls.
Gotcha. Right. So the prompting window, except you're not having those issues that some of us have on the plus account.
I mean, one of the books I'm working on is 312 pages. And the next step is to drop it back into ChatGPT and ask it, hey, where are there gaps? Where are there conflicts? Where are there things I should fix? And I'm going to be interested to see if the context, if it can handle 320 pages of a book or not. But it's gotten so big, it probably can.
Yeah, great. Back on to the book, you sort of talked about some of the benefits. There was direct
Mhm.
cost savings, increased throughput, enhanced service offerings, etc. Out of a suite of those that you wrote back in December 2023 for your end clients, what are you seeing as been some of the biggest benefits you've been able to provide them with using AI versus not?
The part of what we talk about in the book obviously is code and configuration and testing, things under the covers. I mean, clients hire a global systems integrator, frankly, to not have to worry about a lot of what the book was about. I mean,
Yes.
I wrote it for us, for our coworkers. But we also, in the beginning of the book, talk about writing epics, writing user stories, and analyzing user stories. And that is something our clients see. So one thing that has been very beneficial is being able to take a user story and drop it in and say, what should we ask to refine this user story? What details aren't here? Right? Because we've all seen the chart that fixing something at the beginning is this much cost, but if
Yes.
it gets to here, it's this much cost. But if it gets to here, it's, and then suddenly it's in production and it costs 1,000 times more to fix. One place it's very powerful is helping write user stories and helping analyze user stories, and literally saying, here's 20 things that it doesn't appear you're answering in this user story. You should maybe fix your acceptance criteria or expand a little bit on what you're saying. It's been extremely useful for those sort of client facing things. It also does nice presentation decks, right? You can produce documents, you can produce PowerPoint decks. It does a very nice job of helping us be a little bit more structured in how we explain what we're doing to our clients.
Great. So, one of the sayings, I'm sure you've heard it, is AI won't replace doctors, but doctors with AI will replace doctors. Where do
Mm-hmm.
you see the evolution going with AI? Do you think it will eventually replace Salesforce consultants, or do you think it'll just be a tool that assists them to do their job better?
Well, keeping in mind that I work for a company of 350,000 people that do this kind of thing for a living, of course, I'm not going to tell you it's going to replace what we do for our clients.
Yes.
However, I do have a presentation that I give that talks about the fact that I think the future is going to be what's currently being called AI process engineering. In other words, we're going to start looking at the roles people perform in organizations far beyond IT, all roles in an organization. We're going to start looking at how those can be decomposed to tasks, to discrete tasks, and then look for when the ROI suggests it's time to convert that task to AI.
Yes.
So for example, even for this podcast, I mean, I've done enough of this to know you've probably got 100 different little tasks that you have to do, some of which even today AI can probably do for you over time, whether you're an accountant, whether you're an HR person, whether you're an IT person, everything. We're going to start breaking it down into tasks and then pushing those tasks over to AI. And frankly, what's left, we're going to have to figure out not just how to do what's left, but what else that opens up, what else needs to be done in that world of AI slowly starting to do everything that we do.
Yeah, and I agree. And look, rough rule of thumb, 50% of everything we do is, some form of administration. It's something that
Mm-hmm.
we have to do, but we don't like to do. And I think that's the part that'll eat away. And, I saw predictions of, like you said, you've got balding with a grey beard. I'm just, balding, but at this stage because I don't grow the beard, but it would be white. But I know when computers came along, it was like, well, you don't need any assistants. Like everyone got rid of
Mm-hmm.
executive assistants because the computer's going to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
And in all honesty, all it did was made my life harder because all of a sudden we got
Mm-hmm.
250 emails a day and the workload, and it didn't become easier, it became harder, right? And some of the predictions I think didn't play out the way that they thought. I think AI is going to be the same. And I know there's a camp saying, well, the platform like Salesforce, for example, will build as much as it can in platform, and therefore a consultant's job will be less and less in time because the platform will take care of it, right? That's one view that's sort of floating around out there. What's your perspective on a view like that, which is, I suppose, the extreme view?
You're getting into a question we're not going to answer in a 20-minute podcast.
Yeah.
I do think so. Just the 60-second version. I think there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of APIs out there today. The challenge with using APIs has always been the lack of a semantic layer and ontology. Each what you do with each API is different, and it's painful to figure out.
Yes.
I do think that we're moving to a world of personal AI assistants. We'll each have a personal AI assistant that consumes information from APIs and other AIs and presents it to us. So the age of UX designers drawing to a close, because in 10 years, it'll be a personal AI assistant that formats everything. You might want to see something in writing. I'm going to want it read to me. I have a boss that knows Morse code and wants her Apple Watch to message out things to her in Morse code on her watch. The personal AI assistant will do that. The layer below that's going to be swarms of AIs working together for whatever task needs to be done. And between those AIs and the APIs are going to be, there's going to be a new layer, a semantic meaning layer. The APIs won't be updated. There'll be an intermediate layer. Salesforce last week with MuleSoft announced that MuleSoft is going to do that. It'll provide the semantic layer and ontology for the APIs that are serviced via MuleSoft. In that world where you have AI tools that will generate AIs, and the AIs have the semantic and layered ontology between them and the APIs that they want to use, and you've got something like MCP so the AIs can talk to each other. Unfortunately, I do think we are longer term headed to a world where AIs are going to build more AIs to do what the AIs are supposed to do. And we developers, architects are going to end up being more orchestrators,
Yes.
right? We'll define what we want done and make sure it's done to the satisfaction of whoever we're doing it for. But the days of punching cards or writing code or thinking about frameworks, I do think eventually that is going to move to AI. And what we do in building systems, we'll still build systems, we'll just do it very differently than we do today.
Yeah. And look, I've had several conversations. We run an AI mastermind. People are saying, look, I'm not a coder by any means, but I can now create out of AI something that's
Mm-hmm.
80% there. And then I get my team to finish off the other 20, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, that wasn't available to us when you wrote the book in December 2023. So,
Yeah.
you're right. I think it'll be a gradual change. But, one of the hardest things my clients find is, how do I balance everything? I'm trying to work on the business. I'm trying to do all the
Mm-hmm.
delivery, build the team, and I'm also trying to learn what is the latest components that I should be putting in. What are some tips that you've got, given your experience, on how someone should manage, what do I do in AI and what don't I?
Well, and I'm going to sound like an advertisement for the larger vendors, but the reality is that the companies like Salesforce, like Microsoft in particular, Google, Amazon, the major players, they have a vested interest in us finding these tools useful. As
Yes.
much as I love OpenAI and ChatGPT and Anthropic and some of the other Mistral, some of the other vendors out there, they're the kind of products where you have to be willing to roll your sleeves up and get your hands dirty. And as you just said, for an awful lot of people, they just want it to work. They don't care how it works. They don't care what the buzzwords are. They just want their spreadsheets, their PowerPoint decks faster. I found it really interesting that when we first rolled out Microsoft Copilot or BizTalk or Copilot for Microsoft 365, the name keeps changing, but whatever it's called,
Yes.
the enterprise version of the tool, many of my coworkers found the most useful feature the ability to write better, more coherent emails.
Yes.
Forget everything else. The fact that they could write better emails that people got the first time. That's where we're headed.
Yeah.
Let's focus on what the big vendors, and again, I'm not an ad, but these vendors, Microsoft, Salesforce, Google, Amazon,
NetSuite, correct.
they're here to help. I mean, ServiceNow is making up. Just expect the vendors of the products you use today to get with the program and embed AI in everything that their tools do for you. I had a conversation with a client recently that talked to me about what they wanted, and I said that would be a lot of fun to build, but you appreciate it's going to be mid seven figures, or you can just wait 2 years and it'll probably be part of your subscription.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, look, I think, as you said, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, this has gone probably a little longer, doesn't do it justice. But I think, what you can do is follow Andy on LinkedIn. I know that he puts a lot of content out there. You can get in touch with him with the links that we've got in the show notes. ChatGPT for Accelerating Salesforce Development is on Amazon. But what we're going to do is just pause for a moment, thank our sponsors. There we go. We're going to thank our sponsors, and then we're going to come back for the rapid fire to round it out. If you're relying on social media or AI to stay ahead in SaaS consulting, you're missing 90% of the conversation. AI doesn't have access to this information. No algorithm can replace real-world insights from top SaaS partners who've built multi-million-dollar consultancies. Every week, I send a short, high-impact newsletter straight into your inbox. No fluff, no AI-generated noise, just real strategies that work. You'll find exclusive interviews with top SaaS partners and industry experts, behind-the-scenes insights on what's actually working right now, and solo episodes and deep dives you won't find anywhere else on the planet. Recent topics include how top partners build seven-figure businesses without platform dependence, from Salesforce partner to integration powerhouse, and the 5 productivity shifts that doubled my output without adding more hours. This is the only place in the world where you'll get these insights. No recycled content, no AI summaries, just battle-tested strategies that help you land bigger deals and build a business that doesn't depend on you. Want it? Please subscribe now at paulhigginsmentoring.com/newsletter. That's paulhigginsmentoring.com/newsletter. Don't let AI or social media decide what you learn. Get the best SaaS consulting insights straight into your inbox. Andy, ready for the rapid fire?
Yep.
Right. Change these slightly given the conversation we've had, but what are some of the daily habits that help you to be better at AI?
Honestly, mostly deciding that I don't need to solve every problem myself, and I should always see what AI can do for me before I do it myself.
Yeah, great advice. And we talked about some of the resources you go to. You know, what are some of that you haven't mentioned? Some of the resources you go to learn more about AI, and in particular, I suppose, around Salesforce.
Well, given that I've been deep into this for a couple of years now, frankly, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. There's a handful of people there posting incredibly insightful stuff. It's probably where I get half of my news about the advancements in AI right now.
Brilliant. And if I could grant you one wish for your role in Capgemini, what would that be?
Well, not my role at Capgemini. I'd like to know next week's winning lottery number.
Yeah, well, wouldn't we all? And the last one is, what do you know now, since you wrote the book in 2023, that you wish you had known earlier about AI and its impact on our economy?
This is going to sound a little arrogant, but I'm pretty happy with the book. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and I don't know that if I could go back in time that I'd change much about what we did. I think it was the right content at the right time, and I still have people reaching out to me and telling me they find it useful. I wish I had a better answer, but right now I'm pretty happy with what we wrote.
Yeah, and look, you know, if you're sitting here and thinking, gee, I've missed the boat, you know, I wish I had have done what Andy started doing back in 2023. It's like anything in life, just, you know, you can only be better than where you are today. So, you know, best time to plant an orange tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So, you know, just follow Andy and just start every day implementing more and more. And if you are, you know, one of those that are ahead of the curve, you know, share what you're doing, because that can certainly help others. But if you're not, just go and do that little bit of research and use the tools every day to help you improve, because you're certainly not. And often what you'll find is you're actually further ahead of the curve than what you think. So, Andy, thanks for finally coming on the podcast today. I've always, as I said, after hearing you on Josh's podcast, wanted to get you on. So thanks for sharing today, and we look forward to having you on, given how much it will change over the next couple of years.
You bet. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Bye. Great interview with Andy, and as you can tell, he's got so much knowledge, and as he said, it's constantly changing, right? So I recommend that you follow his content to get the latest. But he did talk about, you know, AI won't replace consultants in his view, but consultants using AI will, and that's where he's really helps you. Also, he talks about, the next wave of AI and how you can create a high-performing team with it. And he also, if you want to go deeper into Andy's book, just go on Amazon, get it, ChatGPT for Accelerating Salesforce Development. And also follow him on LinkedIn, as I said, because he constantly updates his knowledge and he's very open in sharing what he's learning. Reach out to him and thank him for being on the show on LinkedIn, and ask him any specific questions you've got, because I know it's hard within the 25 minutes we've got to cover every specific question that you've got, but that's why you can reach out to him. Just mention that you heard him on the show. Don't forget to watch it on the Paul Higgins mentoring channel on YouTube. The quality isn't quite as good as it normally is, but certainly the sound and everything is still there. And thanks for listening, and look forward to seeing you next time on the Paul Higgins podcast.
What's one shift you can make from today's episode? Send me a message. I reply to everyone. And if this helped, share it with a SaaS consulting partner ready to scale beyond 6 figures. Because breaking the ceiling starts with one action.